Well, I started my career in a very, very small school in a very, very small town in East Tennessee. It was Sirgoinsville Elementary. We had 189 children the first year I was there. I was there for 2 years, and then my husband moved us to Slidell, Louisiana. I was the librarian for the school of over 1,200 children. I had gone from 189 to over 1,200. And I did that for a year, and then the girl I had replaced for the year came back from her leave, and so she had to be there a year. So I taught 7th grade English and reading, and then went back to the library for another 3 years. And then I came to Nashville, and my first school with Metro was Rose Park Middle School. Then that lady returned from her leave of absence, and I was looking for someplace else. I live here in the neighborhood of Hermitage Elementary, and I've been here for 31 years. I have so many plans for my time for after I retire. I've got a lot of home projects, like organizing pictures and things and cleaning out closets. Those are my second priority. My first priority is spending time with my granddaughters. They'll be 2 and 6 this month. So I'm excited about being Grammy to them and not missing out on their opportunities. The one book I think all school libraries should have is If I Found a Wistful Unicorn by Ann Ashburn. A teacher gave it to me when I left Slidell, and it's such a sweet story. It names all the things, like it starts out, if I found a wistful unicorn and brought him to you all forlorn, would you pet him? And it goes through a lot of really odd scenes like that. And in the end it says, if any of these things you'll do, I'll never have to say to you, do you love me? After 38 years of being a librarian and teacher, there's so many memories that it was really hard for me to define what was my favorite. I'm the kind of teacher that ended up with all those difficult children. When they were in trouble, my library's always been close to the office, and so as I walked through, I would find children that needed to come get a book and have something to do. One particular child was extremely difficult for everybody, but on his last day, he came bringing me his art project that he had done. He was a 3rd grader, and he wanted me to have it, and he wanted me to always remember him. And I got a hug and this dream catcher thing, and so that's one of my favorite memories. Wow, it's hard to decide what the #1 qualification for being a librarian is. My first thought was being flexible because, well, there's nothing else you can be but being flexible. But I think more the #1 qualification for being a school librarian is to care about everybody and make everybody's day. My advice for a new librarian would be flexible, be enthusiastic, be a learner, be a leader, and make it your passion.
Well, hello. I cannot believe that I have been teaching almost 40 years. I started out in Birmingham, Alabama. I taught 5 years at a middle school, and then I moved back home to Nashville. I have taught at 3 different schools. I started out at Buena Vista, and then I went to J.E. Moss, and now I am here at Cumberland Elementary School. It's been almost 40 years. Wow. After I retire, I have a long list of things I want to do and places I want to go and see. But my #1 priority will be to take care of my mom. My mom had a heart attack right before Christmas, so I've got to get her up and ready so that we can hit the road. The book that I think that every library should have Well, maybe not every library. It's my favorite book that I share every year. And it's The Old Woman Who Lives in the Vinegar Bottle. And it's written by Margaret Reed MacDonald. And it's about a woman who complains all the time. And she complains about where she lives. And finally, at the end of the story, the fairy puts her right back where she started. And she says, if you're not content here, you won't be content anywhere. My favorite memory about being in the library could also be considered a nightmare because I started J.E. Moss Library. It was brand new. They didn't have the open day package then. I had to go through catalogs and pick every single book one by one. And then when all those library cards came in, I had to file them in the card catalog. It was a nightmare, but I would not change a thing about it because it's also one of the best memories I have. I think there are several qualifications that a new librarian should have in order to be the best that they can be. The first one is to have a great sense of humor. You've got to have a good sense of humor in this job. You've got to be flexible because there's always something thrown in. And the next thing is you got to have backbone because there's always somebody trying to take advantage of you, the sweet librarian.
I started teaching in 1978 in Houston, Texas, and then I moved to Dickinson, Texas, and quit teaching when my kids were born. We moved up here after 8 years in Texas, and I taught at Mount Juliet High School and Antioch High School, and then I became a librarian. So after 20 years of teaching, I became a librarian to do something else, and I did not want to stop working with students. And that's why I chose the library, and it's been a great place to be for the last 12 years. After I retire, I plan to do a 120-day contract. I will continue being our school sit lead, and I will teach Edgenuity classes A day only. On B days, I'm hoping to volunteer with Walden's Puddle because I've always wanted to do that and never had time. And hopefully travel and see some of my friends. The books that I think every library should have are high quality nonfiction, and I'm grateful for Hope Hall for all of her suggestions every year because she's the best. And I have these books that are on my list right now because the best thing about being a librarian is you get the books first. So these are 4 new books that have come in that are on my stack in my office so no one else can have them. My favorite memory is from a few years ago. We had a student who was brand new from Somalia, and she did not speak a word of English. And she thought all the kids made fun of her because she couldn't understand what they were saying. And I got new books in with Emily's help. I got a book just for this child. And I called, she was in the library, I called her over and I said, "Oh, Mahabo, your book is here." And she said, no miss, because she couldn't read. And I said, "No, your book is here." And her teacher helped me come over or get her over. And we opened up the book and it was a visual dictionary. So it had pictures and then the word was in Somali and English. And she teared up. And when she teared up, I teared up, the other teacher teared up. And that's when I knew that what we have in the library for our students really, really does matter. And all the help we have with collection development is just so important. I think the number one qualification to be a librarian is to never ever forget what it was like to be a teacher. To be able to provide the materials a teacher needs, to help them when they're overwhelmed, to watch their kids when they're late to school, to do whatever you can to help them because teachers don't often have that person. They have coaches and principals and everybody else who's always coming from another angle, and we can come from the angle of support. And that's been a blessing to me to be able to help people. The number one piece of advice I got from Sloan Criswell a long time ago, and that was to do whatever it takes. And I've always thought about that. That was her motto, and I think that's a good one, and I've tried to keep that. The other piece of advice I have is to be able to say no, and I'm not really good at that, but sometimes we need to look at our schedules and what we do, and sometimes there are just a few things that we can't do. I try not to say no very often, but I've gotten better at that. And the best thing in the world about being a librarian is you get the good books first. As I reflect back on my 12 years as a librarian, I'm very grateful for all the people who helped me. Sloan and Jennifer and Hope and Sharon Thompson, who helped me at my first library that was a mess, and she came over with cleaning supplies and helped me clean and organize. And for Stephanie, who has always been my support. Everybody I'm sure I'm not mentioning, but so many people who've helped me. And that's how I made it as a teacher. I became better every year as a teacher because I went to people and asked them what worked and how it worked. And the same thing for the library. I've been so lucky to be in Metro, where we do have the support of each other. And the Friday afternoon get-togethers at local restaurants are very nice as well.